Whatever. So Kris is going to talk to us from his fairly new role at JLL, so big real estate company. John Lang LaSalle. Sounds French as well. Must be French. No?
British.
Oh, well. And our second speaker, Preena, was online. So she's a CRM ambassador from Telstra. So without ado, we're going to start the presentations and the proceedings. And I'm going to hand over to Kris. Take it over.
Thanks, Fred. This is going to be interesting because I'm trying to get. Here we go, straight away.
Here we go.
So I want to obviously try and face everyone, face the camera, and look at my slides.
The cables.
cables everywhere. Right. So normally I like to stand up and present, but obviously today.
Do you want me to click on the button?
No, it's okay. That's okay. So hello everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks Fred for inviting me. My name's Kris Curtis. I'm just going to adjust this a little bit more. And so in my career, I've worked in some pretty large companies, mainly analytical and BI type roles, moving in and managing teams that have obviously been using Tableau. So today I'm going to talk to you about building data products. And this is thinking differently about dashboard creation. I wanted to share some of my learnings and why I started to think a little bit differently about data and dashboard creation. So just a little bit about me to start with. I am originally from Brisbane, but I moved to London in 2006. So I've actually been away from Brisbane for a long time, 15 years in the UK, and my wife is British, and we decided to relocate back to Brisbane last year, all the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. So, wanted to come back here with the weather and a bit of sort of space and lifestyle. So got a very young family, but, fortunate with being able to work with a different variety of organizations, each at different stages of growth and maturity. And this has helped me gain a really deep understanding of how data could and should be used within these organizations. So as Fred mentioned, I'm working for Jones Lang LaSalle. We've got Gary here as well, and I think Darren might be online. So a couple of other sort of people involved from the company and also involved in the Tableau community here. So my role, Global BI Technology Director, it sounds quite fancy, but it's actually not that exciting. And the primary purpose of my role is to focus on how our teams use a lot of the analytical tools that we have at our disposal. So what that means that we're making sure that we use these tools in a responsible way. We know that some of these tools cost a lot of money. And if we're only using like 20, 30% of their capability, we want to make sure that we're trying to maximize the value of that spend. So, it's really sensitive, isn't it?
I think I will see.
Don't want to touch it. So the three main things that I focus on in my role, protecting our existing assets. So these are like Tableau server, and we use Alteryx in our database environments. Also innovation, discovering what kind of other tools are out there that we can, add to our suite, making sure that we're delivering the insight to the business. And also like partnering with our IT and platform owners, so making sure that they understand what our needs are, making sure those environments are sort of suited and giving us the best experience for our stakeholders. So the main things I wanted to talk to you today, and the key things to take away is that I think BI and data is changing. It's no longer considered like an independent element within an organization. Data is now feeding like models, recommendation engines, CRM sort of mailing lists, all this kind of stuff. It's becoming more and more mature. And this means that as BI and data professionals, we need to really learn and adapt from some of the operational processes from the IT side of things, and making sure that these things don't break. because when they do break, we lose money. They become such an important part of how businesses operate now. So the next thing is around simplification. So as obviously data becomes more ingrained in the organizations, it's being reached to more and more people. They can't ignore data anymore. It's kind of like in their face. And so businesses are expecting people to use data in everyday roles to make these decisions. And it's our goal to make sure that this shift is as easy as possible. If people don't understand where data comes from, then how it gets to them, there can be some sort of unrealistic expectations. Data just suddenly appears and it's all nice and clean for them to use. So helping get them getting a good understanding of what processes actually go through for data to be coming in and made available for them. And then the third thing is around the tools. And so we're quite lucky that there's already a lot of ways that we can make some of these changes that I'm going to be talking about. A lot of these things already exist in Tableau. So I'm just going to share some of the things that I've sort of learned along my way, and hopefully that they're not all unknown to you, and share some other people that maybe you can try something new and see how we can incorporate these kind of things in. So I'm going to share some tips which can help us on this journey to go from dashboards to data products. So when working at my previous companies, there was a bit of a common theme. Both of these type of organizations had very immature BI functions. They were very similar in terms of how the business perceived the teams, and it was more like a data vending machine. Requests come in and dashboards came out type thing. A lot of times dashboards were just kind of given to people, and then after a while they just become discarded and just sitting there as kind of like technical debt, just sitting on servers and hitting the database and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the time each of these business units had an analyst assigned to them, so it was very much kind of reactive type requests that were coming through. And this also meant that a lot of other parts of the business just did not have any kind of support from data. So like some of the more non-traditional kind of data areas like HR and legal and procurement, these type of functions just didn't have any support because they didn't fund any sort of analyst resource. So a lot of time we found that requests weren't triaged, they weren't prioritized. It was a lot of like whoever shouted loudest got the sort of the outcome. And there was no real collaboration amongst the analytical teams. So a lot of times the requests were very similar between sales and marketing, and duplication of effort was occurring. So what I found that when moving into these organizations started to evolve into data, what I call data organizations. So moving from like a BI team to now becoming more of a data organization. The first thing that changed was the appointment of like a CDO type role. And these people would go off into the business, kind of act as chief cheerleaders, and really build the relationships from the top down and selling the value of what data is and why it's important and why the business should invest in it more. Hire more people, the infrastructure and all these kind of tech stacks, which are obviously super expensive. A lot of the time, they also helped highlighting some of the issues and challenges and stuff like that. So at my last company, I actually saw the biggest evolution from a team of 15, which actually grew to 80 plus analysts in 2 years. If you add the sort of engineering space as well, it's probably another 80 of that as well. So 150 people in total, which was a huge amount of growth in such a short amount of time. Other elements which allowed some of this transformation is enabling the business to understand what's actually possible, selling the vision, but also removing the barriers. This was driven a lot by self-service analytics. It's quite a hot topic at the moment as well. This was pushed out into the businesses. Instead of being like us versus them, we invited business users into work more collaboratively. Data was no longer an IT black box type practice. Tickets were just submitted and reports produced. So more collaboration, more targeted insight. And this was delivered because the business was more informed. They were able to sort of like do their own sort of investigations and then actually come to the data functions with a little bit more context in terms of what they're actually trying to do and trying to solve. This also benefited the analysts because they were not just getting the same old questions coming through, they actually were doing work that was focused on strategic initiatives. So, a lot of these kind of changes was around like how data was branded in the business. One of the things is like data was seen as mysterious and complicated and too technical. And by what I've saw done well was people sort of simplifying like what data is and how the business can benefit from it. And that's where we sort of start to get to this kind of like adoption of like product concepts. One of the things that we introduced was this concept of data products. We had consumers of data. They had specific needs, desires, and the issue was that it's difficult or impossible to create like a unique solution for everybody. And I like to use these analogies where that's why tailor-made suits are so expensive, is because you're creating like really bespoke sort of output for that type of customer. We can look at Cadbury's chocolate. There's the sort of the one core bunch of ingredients, but multiple different things that come out of it. The flavors still different flavors, but the main manufacturing process is the same. And so we kind of like adopted this data product mentality. And what we did was we kind of like introduced these definitions of what a data product was. A data product is a pipeline or components of a pipeline that take raw data and turn it into insights or automated decisions. And so what we started to talk about was how the outcome of a data product could be a Tableau dashboard. So we talked about this evolution of BI functions into data organization. One of the key things was the simplification of data. And you can see here, this was the chief data officer at the time. He just took this around the business and really sort of highlighted how actually when you look at it, it's actually quite simple, because you're accessing data, you're bringing it in from different systems, you're transforming it, making it usable, and then you're delivering it back into the business. We deliver through visualizations such as Tableau. So that was the kind of the area that I played in, was the whole delivery piece. I had a team of developers who were building Tableau dashboards. I was running the Tableau server, and now at JLL, I kind of like help advise like how the best ways we can use Tableau and make sure that we're using the product in an efficient way. When I saw this, it really resonated with me. I felt it was like a great way to sort of like highlight the value of what we did to people who would tend to be a little bit more resistant and scared when you started talking about data and ETL pipelines and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's important to recognize that when we look at this, the delivery piece is much more is visible to the business. They see the dashboards, they see the charts, they see this kind of stuff. What they don't often see is the sort of ingestion processes and the transformations that are taking place behind the scenes. And I think there's been a lot of focus on DevOps and data ops as sort of like processes being introduced now. I think there's a lot of good things that we can learn from that. I've attended conferences before where people ask, where should data sit in an organization? And when people say, definitely not in IT. And I'm kind of going like, hang on a minute, but IT have done all this stuff, in terms of like incident management and DevOps. They've done it well for years and years and years. And we're saying we don't want to be part of that, but I think there's a lot of learnings we can take from that. So in that is try to educate and inform people that there's actually stuff that's under the surface there that needs to be made aware of. But it's also important to have the right type of monitoring, alerting, incident management in place to make sure that that whole kind of process is working properly. But that's not what we're here for today. So that's a completely different topic. So one of the reasons we're here tonight is we deliver BI through to the business through Tableau. And when we consider Tableau, a Tableau dashboard as a data product, we can break down the product creation in 3 different stages: planning, development, and launch. Most BI teams have quite probably similar methodology. I've just consolidated a little bit from some of my previous experiences. And I like this analogy of looking at it like a data assembly line. We were joking at a previous company where we were too close to the factory floor as managers. We were getting our hands dirty. We were helping build stuff. And what we needed to do was standing like supervisors, standing on the up above everything and looking down and seeing where the bottlenecks were, seeing where things were getting held up and falling apart, and making sure that we were shipping these products off the assembly line out into our customers. So just to kind of cover off, like, these kind of things, like, this shouldn't be anything new to people here, but, talking about the planning stage, creating those requirements, getting those briefs in, people engage us when they need our help, and they're trying to answer a question. So it's our job to be patient and really sort of help them talk through their problem, and then we can solve it with data. Prioritization, it's likely that there's going to be other requests for data products, and it's important to determine what's important. And really dictate the priority based on like a whole bunch of factors. Wireframing, I think this is important, and I know it's something that we're sort of like really keen on at JLL, taking the stakeholder on that journey and really sort of helping them start to see what that prototype looks like in terms of that product creation. It helps gives a sense of what it's going to look like, but also help to determine what data structure is actually required there as well. Then there's the kind of like the whole walkthrough, engaging stakeholders, making sure that what's going to be built is actually what's going to meet their needs, creating the technical specifications, detailed documents, which captures what's going to be built, and then getting that agreement from the stakeholder. We're not just running off and building something before the consumer is actually going to say, yes, that's actually what I want. Then there's development, and this is, obviously where the fun begins. Everyone wants to just rush off and start, extracting data and, writing code and building sort of Tableau charts and stuff like that. And so we obviously go and explore, we check on the data that we're looking at. We're building, we're doing data models, we're doing some data prep, and we're making sure that these visualizations can be created. So, the charts and dashboards are created based on the wireframing that was done. And then we work with the sort of stakeholders, almost like doing those kind of like customer focus groups and iterating, saying like, how's this look? Is this okay? Have you got any questions? And really start to, flesh out any of those, bugs or nuances, getting that feedback and questions. And then we're at launch. And I think this is sometimes we kind of bypass this, and we have a product and we're ready to ship it, and we just put it out there. We publish it on Tableau server and off it goes. And then we wonder why no one's looking at it, or the same questions are being asked over and over again. And I think this is where we kind of like, we don't really do enough marketing. We don't really, go off and sell our products out there. And so when we think all the hard work is done, we're sort of we're ready for our product to go to the customers. And this is, obviously a stage where we're kind of overlooking, and we're not really doing that. So investing the time and resources can drive value and help those partnerships. So there's things like presentations, building the training material, walkthrough guides, short videos, hosting training sessions, especially if it's like complex visualizations and complex data, data being sort of like presented back to the business. Then there's a kind of like the iterative ongoing feedback and customer support. And then the last piece is the kind of the technical documentation. How does the product actually work? Making sure that that's there. If the person who moves on, making sure that that IP is retained within the organization. So I know that I'm guilty of this in the past, that when we've created stuff, we publish it and then we just leave it alone. And because normally there's high demand, there's lots of new requests coming in, the business is eager for the next thing, and this leads to a saturation of products in the market. Tableau server becomes very bloated with lots of variations and very similar dashboards. Stakeholders don't really know like which one is the right one to be picking from. They're spoiled for choice, but then definitions start to change, and they could be looking at incorrect things, which then erodes the kind of trust and the reputation that has been built up. So it also starts to impact the environment. You think about, in my previous roles as Tableau server administrator, taking those backups, it starts to build up in terms of how many gigabytes that a server backup can actually go to. We've got hundreds of Tableau extracts running each day, all competing for time because everyone schedules them at like 8 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, on Monday morning, 8 o'clock. Yeah, exactly. So, they're all sort of bottlenecked at that time to try and get refreshed, ready for the business users to come in. So we start accumulating this technical debt. This can erode business value, and it could be also business value eroded because of we've got BI resources doing very similar things, and having to invest in like server upgrades and licensing and all this kind of stuff as well. So not cheap to do that kind of stuff. So this is where we kind of like start thinking of treating dashboards as data products. We can address some of those things. So I'm going to give you some tips about how we can use Tableau and Tableau Server to manage our portfolio of products more efficiently. So the first thing is a question about, is it actually being used? And this is kind of like for people who are just sort of publishing dashboards. We've got a really simple thing here, just showing the views of all time. You know when you've published it, you can actually get a sense of like, is this actually being looked at? Products will have a certain shelf life. It might be a project specific type dashboard. So it's going to reach a point where no one's actually looking at it anymore. So if you're a creator or an explorer, you can use this metric to really quickly just see how many total views for your workbook, and you can compare it to others to see its popularity from your content across other ones. So it's really quick to see like which dashboards suddenly gain that popularity and the view count suddenly jumps up.
Kris, do you use the last 3 months or last month to get a feeling on in time?
Yeah, so Dave's just asked a question about looking at, you can see there the views all time. There's a, you can change that to be like different time periods as well. So it's a really good point. So yeah, you can start to change that views all time. My mouse cursor's not on there. Adjusting that views of all time to show a relative time period, just to sort of get a bit more clarity on those 89 views might be, from over 6 months ago. So I might not have, the recency that's going on with that dashboard. If you're a site admin, this is where I think there's a lot more substance in these reports. I think I'd love to raise this kind of as a feedback or a product request that publishers get these type of information from the site admin reports for their own content, because I think that would add a lot of value. We can see within the site admin report, so people who are site administrators, this will look, they would have seen this before, but people who aren't, there's these pretty cool views which I could give you way more insight in terms of like what's actually going on with content. So we've got things like traffic to views, we've got stats for load times, which I think is probably one of the most important admin views out there. And there's a recent one that's come up, stale content. So, really highlighting what content isn't being looked at. These give way more detail and also trended views, so you can see the peaks and troughs and when things are starting to decline. Was there higher views after a demo session, or was it published in an internal blog? These type of activities where people are marketing these type of information out there and driving that engagement. Do people know about it? There's obviously like tags. I don't know how many people have used the tagging feature much. 100%. Like they've saved my skin before, because doing things like migration of content, getting tagging items, you can then set extracts to say I only want to pick content using that tag, using different API calls and stuff like that. So tags are absolutely fantastic.
Does it show up in the search? The tag?
What's that?
The customer.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's exactly the main.
Just do a word chart of the most popular words I'm going to use as tags, and put that in front of people so they're not creating endless new tags.
So we actually created, at my previous organization, we created like a list of tags. So we said that these are the tags that needed to be used as part of the kind of like, if you were giving it a license agreement, you had to use this kind of like Tableau principles, and those kind of list of tags was maintained by the sort of internal team as the reference point. So there weren't spelling mistakes, because there's obviously case sensitivity. People don't check the spelling of things and all that kind of stuff. So you can quickly get things which get a bit messy, but if you keep an eye on that as if you're a site admin or a server admin, it can be really a beneficial activity. So just a quick one, to show how tags in, you can add them. You go to the dashboard, explore all workbooks, actions, and then tag. And then you can just see there's a free text field where you can add that tag in. So important to recognize what that the case sensitivity and making sure you're consistent within what those tags are. And then you can see that I've started, I thought I put an image of starting to type in the tag, but then you can see where the tags appear. So share with me. This is, I think a lot of people just kind of like take that URL and send it off to people via instant message or emails and stuff like that. The share with me option, when you click share, it gives you two things. You can share a link, or you can actually share with a named user. If you share with a named user, when they log in, you can see that there's an option there saying what's been shared with me. And so they can just go straight there and they can have a list of, all the dashboards that have been shared with them. Really good way to get people straight there, because if there's a stakeholder, you can create something and you can share it with them straight away. So it's always there at the top of mind. They need to log in and click on that one thing, and there's the list of dashboards that have been shared with them. So they don't have to get into Tableau server and start searching, finding emails for URLs that they've been sent. So definitely, I think the share function is definitely underused as well. And I think an important one is once you show someone how to do that, like they can then do it for other people as well. So it starts to like cascade and grow from there. Has anyone walked through a park and seen this before? And so essentially what it is a pathway that's been created by people just taking shortcuts. But there's a name for this, and I kind of stumbled across this. It's called desire lines. And what this means is it's an unbiased measure of how people use things. And the size represents the amount of demand for the taking the desired over the designed path. So there's footpaths right next to it, but they've just gone up, I'm going to go there. And it's quite a well-worn pathway. So Tableau has desire lines. I think this is cool. So when you start looking at dashboards that have been on the server for a while, you start to see these usage patterns that exist. And I kind of like ask people when they come to me and say, oh, my dashboard's running slow, it's taking ages to load. And I bring it up, and the first thing I look at is saying, you've got 3 views here which are being used, but you've got these 2 other views which no one's looking at. Like, can we take them out? Oh, but the stakeholder requested them and they were important. But clearly no one's using it. So like, why can't we take them out and remove that? And that will then free it. There could be additional data sources and all this kind of stuff in there. So, using this as a technique to really start to, lighten the load of the dashboard over time, I think it's a really sort of a great idea where the kind of product design comes into, the Tableau, and we can see these usage patterns emerging. Who's seen this view? This is, again, you can see under the actions, you can see who's seen this view, and it creates a list of users and how many times they've viewed it, when the last time they viewed it. And so it can give you insight into the stakeholders who are using it. Did they commission the work? Are there other people who have suddenly discovered it and started using it? Do they understand what they're looking at? Have they been engaged? Have they been walked through? But it also tells you who's not looking at it, because you might have had stakeholders who requested the piece of work and they haven't looked at it, or they haven't looked at it in months. So you can work out, like, why aren't they using it? Ask those questions. I personally am like super frustrated when I had work commissioned by someone and I look at it and then they've not been using it. So I use it as a chance to re-engage them and understand, like, why aren't you using this? Like, this is a lot of work, is there something wrong with it? Kind of like, go from there.
It's good to find your change champions as well, when you've got people that are using it. You have got high influencers, and they'll be able to talk to them.
Yep. So there's a picture of, that you can see when you can bring up who's seen this view. So another thing is around speed matters. And this is kind of like something that I've been focusing recently at JLL. Is there's research by Nielsen Norman Group indicating that a 10-second delay will often make users leave a site immediately. And if this is behavior from people on websites, why would it be vastly different in a work environment? You know, I mean, I guess because we're paid to be there, so you know you're willing to sort of wait a little bit longer. But there's kind of two main reasons why speed is important. One is limitations. Waiting impacts short-term memory, and we start to lose attention. And there's aspirations. Human nature desires control over the outcomes, and so we actually rather we don't like being dependent on computers and waiting for that kind of stuff. So what they've broken down is like response time in 0.1 seconds. It gives us the feeling of the instantaneous response. Result feels caused by the user. I've clicked on something and this is what's been presented to me. 1 second delay, the thought flow is seamless, but they can sense the delay, but they still feel in control. 10 seconds, they start thinking about other things and it's difficult to get their brain back on track once the page responds. So this is why speed is important. And so how do you tell if your dashboard's too slow? The first might be just direct feedback, people complaining, your dashboard's too slow. So you might get this direct feedback from end users. There's probably going to be comments made, but you can get your colleagues to test and give that kind of feedback. It's always going to be slower on Tableau server compared to desktop. But there's things that you can do like start performance recording, you know, reviewing the site admin reports. As I mentioned earlier, there's the stats for load times. You can start to benchmark what that load time is. And possibly users are disengaging because that dashboard takes too long. So using the Tableau desktop performance recorder, you can identify these events which are causing these delays, and you can like work to address those. So that's kind of like an image of what that performance recorder looks like in terms of like telling you, this is my query is taking the longest thing to generate, and then you can like work down a little bit more detail in terms of like if there's specific charts which are causing these type of delays. So did you know that you can also run the performance recording on Tableau server? So this is a really cool feature. You do need the Tableau server administrator to enable this. And you can see there in the image, right in the bottom, there's settings, there's a Tableau server administrator, and then they click on the box, workbook performance metrics. Then you can start a performance recording on Tableau server. Looks a bit complicated here, but essentially you take the URL of the dashboard, you insert this random :record_performance equals yes ampersand, and you insert that in between the end of the URL and before the ID. Then you click refresh. Then you interact with the dashboard as you would, like as a user, and then you'll see that stopwatch icon there. You can see it on the image there under performance. Under business, above the performance.
So
sorry.
it's a bit like the clock on the bottom right. Oh, yeah, I was looking.
So you interact with the dashboard, and then once you're finished, you click on that stopwatch on the page, and it ends the recording, and then it will display the same sort of outcome. So gives you a bit more accuracy in terms of what that end user is experiencing on Tableau server. But that's something that I discovered it not too long ago, but I think it's a really cool way that you can get a little bit more understanding of like how those end users are experiencing your product.
Do you have to be a server admin or can it site admin?
It has to be server admin to enable it, but once it's enabled, then anyone can do it. So even like just a normal end user of the Tableau server can do that, yeah. But it needs to be enabled by the server administrator to start with.
Also, you shouldn't really leave it enabled if there is
depending on how many times it's used and stuff like that. So yeah, it's one of those hidden ones that exist out there. With some of the more recent releases of Tableau Desktop, I thought that one of the most exciting features is the new optimizer function. So this is in Desktop 2022.1. I don't know how many people are on this. We are not there yet at JLL, but obviously I've been able to play with it a little bit. For too long, I've witnessed dashboards being published on the servers, and then people contact me saying, Why is it taking so long to load? The optimizer just condenses a whole bunch of best practices out there and generates warnings for people before they go to publish. And taking these actions can really improve load times. And you can use other things, like there's a lot of stuff out there. There's white papers. I think there's a recent one called Designing Efficient Workbooks in Production. 88 pages. I've actually gone through it in a lot of detail. But it's definitely sort of bedtime reading. It's going to put you to sleep, that one.
Point may not be aware of, that was actually written in Australia by Alan Melton.
That's the original one, and then there's been an updated version. Yes, exactly. Yep. I know. Yeah, Alan's was great. I that was the kind of sat on the desk for a long time. That one. So why do this type of optimization? We can increase product satisfaction, increase productivity. We can actually measure the time saved from users loading dashboards. You can attribute how much time people are, what their hourly rate is, and then sort of work back from that, saying I've reduced the dashboard loading from 30 seconds down to 10 seconds, and you can start to attribute, that kind of ROI from that. There's also cost reduction sort of and incentives as well, especially when a lot of businesses starting to move to the kind of whole cloud databasing, paper query type models as well. So if there's inefficiencies in terms of how queries are being written and going straight into Tableau, you can start to generate a little bit of expensive bills coming from the likes of Snowflake and Google BigQuery. So definitely the optimizer, if you haven't seen it before, when you have your dashboard, you can go up to the publish at the top as if you're going to publish, and in there's an option to say run optimizer. It will then check the best practices, and you can see there I've got a red warning, take action. Then there's another one saying needs review, and then there's 14 that have kind of passed the checks type thing. So it looks for things like very complex calculations, flagging them up. Can you move them upstream to the database or Alteryx or Tableau Prep or whatever? Maybe, Tableau is not the best place to have, lengthy if statements and stuff like that running in there. And so the last one is around archiving, and there's going to be a time where we should be asking this type of question: has the dashboard served its purpose? And consider when it's time to deprecate. There's going to be a point where there's no value being obtained. This could be the end of a project. It could be a change in business objectives. It's a good practice to set sort of these milestones, every 3 months, 6 months type thing, to check in on activity, begin those deprecation steps, reduce the extract frequency. So then, things might be updating every day. Maybe you can move that to a weekly update. That then frees up 6 less extract jobs that are running each week. Start to send those notifications to historic users. Do you still need this? You can move it to an archive folder. A lot of this stuff can be automated as well. Delete or pause the extract and subscription tasks. I've seen dashboards with huge subscription tasks that are just generating full PDF documents of a 12-page dashboard. These kind of jobs do impact the Tableau server, and I think a lot of users don't realize that. And then, actually just removing it. And I know Gary's team do some really great stuff with taking it off the server and then putting it in a GitHub repo and keeping it there in case the stakeholders do want it to bring it back at some point. Important to sort of not just turn it off and leave it on Tableau server, especially if it does take up a bit of size, because going back to the Tableau server admin, those backup jobs, they can start to build up. And if it does go, the Tableau server does need to be restored from backup, that smaller that size, the faster that backup is going to get restored. So these are just kind of the few things where we can use Tableau to help frame dashboards as data products. By changing the perception, we can reduce the load on our platforms. We can lower that impact on Tableau server and our databases. We can focus users more on a refined set of information, and we can support customers with getting the insights that they need, getting them more comfortable with the data and data products. And this means they're able to use these more often and obtain the insight that they're looking for. If you're interested in more on this topic, I'd recommend checking out this book, The Art of Innovation by Tom Keeley. This book is full of great ideas. I love this book. I don't know if anyone's read it before or not here. It's a guy from a design agency called IDEO. They're they're well recognized in the US. But there's great ideas about how to foster an environment of collaboration, ideas, and other methods related to product design. And these can definitely be adopted and taken to the world of BI and data. More related to data visualization and Tableau, David Perez, who's based in London, he has some really good ideas on this topic as well. And he explores design thinking methods and how we can improve the way that we build visualization products as well. So he's got a blog post out there as well called Rethinking Data Visualizations. I'm excited about how BI and data is merging into the product space. And I think it's an exciting time, and it gives a bit more credibility to what we do and for all the companies that we work for. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Kris. I enjoyed the present. Learned so many things. Do we have any questions? I know it sounds weird to just leaning over the microphone. Do you have any questions in a virtual room? I was monitoring the chat, and a lot of people enjoyed all of them enjoyed the presentation. But do you want to get close?
Yeah,
please.
I know that JLL put a lot of effort into design thinking.
Yep.
I'm really interested in what you guys are doing in that space.
I'm not probably the best qualified to talk about because Fiona.
To designing a dashboard.
Yeah, well, there is a lot of effort put into that. I don't know, Gary, you can probably share because you were probably more closely involved with Fiona and when that was all done.
Yeah, we've been doing it for a long time. So we sort of break things down into two parts, obviously doing the right things and then doing things right. And I think what we've spoken about today was really doing things right and a lot of the development side of things. But doing the right things is really our design thinking principles, where we actually run our workshops, we understand the pain points in the business and really relating what we do back to the value creation stuff. Gain a lot of empathy with the users and really putting them under a bit of pressure to come up and really articulate quickly what their challenges are. So it's a pretty fun activity, and it's certainly something that sharpens our focus when it comes to designing work.
Oh, great, thank you.
You're welcome to come along anytime you like.
Especially just across the road as well.
Well,
Can we all come?
These guys are just over the road. So.
Any questions from the Zoomers? Comments, thoughts? Any questions from the room? No? So thanks again, Kris. I think that was
no problems.
Amazing. And I guess
just confirming, can you see?
Yeah, we see your screen now. So
perfect.
We'll hear you clear as well.
Okay, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, and I'm going to hear us as well.
Okay.
Someone.
Yeah, no worries. I can't see the screen, so if anyone has any questions, just come off mute and ask the question. Awesome, thank you so much for having me, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. But a little bit about me to start off with. So my name is Preena. I am currently the product owner for CRM analytics at Telstra Enterprise. I have worked across a number of different organizations. You can see on the left-hand side, I kind of mainly started off at Rio Tinto, and then over the years just worked through a couple of different industries. I've never actually worked in the same industry twice. I love getting a lot of different experience. And within those industries, I actually worked in a lot of different teams as well. So everything from sort of sales, procurement, HR, marketing. But one thing I had in common across all of those was I've always worked with data and analytics. Always usually landed in the analytics, visual analytics space. Worked across a lot of different platforms. I have worked with Tableau quite a while ago, actually, back when I was with Rio Tinto, and started working with CRMA when it was Wave, so back in 2009. As Frederick and Caroline mentioned, I am currently a Tableau ambassador for CRMA, so I did start in the Salesforce Analytics Champions program, and then obviously with all of the changes and all the name changes as well, moved across into the Tableau Ambassador program. Outside of work, a bit about me. I am from New Zealand, so born in Wellington, moved over here when I was quite young and have lived most of my life in Brisbane. I did also work for a year in Singapore. So that was when I was Rio Tinto. I stood up their sales and marketing and analytics office over there. Outside of that, my life kind of revolves around my dog, as most of you earlier in the call may have seen. She's very demanding and loves attention. And a bit of a shameful plug here, but my husband and I recently opened a bar. Well, it's a taproom, nano brewery and cafe. So if you're around the north side, it's in Brendale, and that picture there is actually a beer that I learned to brew. So it's a strawberry shortcake biscuit ale. So moving into what I'm going to talk about. So with CRM analytics, I'm going to start talking about contextual and actionable insights. So what is that? When we talk about insights, contextual insights, it's usually around insights that we embed in an object, so Salesforce objects that our users are working in. They're insights which allow our teams to proactively manage their customers, and obviously coming from a Telstra enterprise space, a lot of our sales teams look after multiple customers and big customers as well. We always like to try and make the usability of what our teams are doing a lot easier. So we reduce that swivel chair and multiple clicks when we look at contextual insights. And then from the actionable perspective, it's you've got the insights in front of you, it's where you're working, and then we want you to be able to take an action from exactly what you're seeing, and also collaborate with your peers. And when I say peers, I mean, we look at it from a sales perspective, but that could be collaborating with others in marketing, it could be service, or other peers in your sales team as well. So just a little bit about CRMA. I'm not sure how many people know a lot about it. So really high level. Obviously it sits alongside the Salesforce platform. And when you actually dive in, you start at the data perspective, and obviously being native to Salesforce, you have access directly to all of the Salesforce objects and fields. But we do also bring in a lot of external data. So for example, at Salesforce, we did use the Informatica connector and connect to all of the multiple legacy systems that Telstra has. So once we've got sort of that data being ingested, we then look at it from a data flow and recipe perspective, and obviously moving more into recipes as well. So a couple of things that you can do with the data: edge, mark, digest, transform. And when I talk about transform, a couple of the things that we look at is flatten, sentiment detection, time series forecasting. You can aggregate it, Einstein discovery, the predictive and AI models. So you can actually do that all within when you're building out, when you're building out your data set. And then once you've got that, you've scheduled it and monitor it quite frequently. So once we have our data set, they end up in an app, and think of an app sort of like a folder where we can set security and sharing rules on that app. And Salesforce actually give you the option to create out-of-the-box apps as well that already come with data sets created, and then templated dashboards as well with those data sets using the Salesforce data that it connects to. From that data, we then go ahead and start exploring what you've created through a lens. So look at a lens as a building block to then end up in a dashboard. And then from the dashboard, similar to what, how we work across Tableau, you've got widgets, as I mentioned, the templates as well. And then the more detailed language, the SQL language that we get in and create a lot of the queries that we use. And then from there, we share those dashboards. So either the analytics tab in Salesforce, we share through community, which is now called experiences. So that's where, for example, within Telstra, we share with a lot of our partners. We get to pick the security on how we share that. And the part I'm actually going to talk through today is where we embed it. So we embed those dashboards right into the objects where our users are working. So I didn't want to do a live demo because we all know how live demos go. So I've done a video and I am hoping that it plays okay. There is no sound, so I'm actually going to talk to it as it plays through. So I'll stop it in case it gets too quick and I'm still talking. Cool. So from Salesforce, our sales teams head into their account page. And the first thing that pops up in front of them is this Insights tab. And as I said, it's contextual insights. It's all around pointing out what's happening with that customer. that they're looking at. So covering things like the health and NPS, the contracts, as you can see, we call out there, we turn it red. That's how many that are expiring soon. We then look at the activities that we've got there, and we can see that there's overdue activities. So being able to hover over that number and get a view of what are those actual activities and what are the days that they are currently overdue. And so it's giving you a little bit more information, but with then the option to drive into a secondary, more detailed dashboard. And then in this view, we have the table view. And from here is where I was saying that we can take actions directly from that dashboard. So for that activity there, going in and changing the due date on that and pushing it out as that meeting was rescheduled. So saving that actually goes and updates that task object in Salesforce. So we then have something similar with cases. So we look at our service cases for our customer. We can see that there's 2 in progress there. And again, hovering over that little segment of that chart gives you the option to view what case that actually is. And sorry, that kind of glitched a bit there, but again, diving into a secondary dashboard that sits right behind that, all still within that account page as well, but giving the user more insights and more metrics that relate to what is happening with their customer cases. And again, with the table view, being able to actually let our users take actions right from that dashboard, creating a new task. And so on the right-hand side, just behind this little pop-up screen, you can see a list of all these tasks here, and that's where the tasks that I'm creating on that screen now will actually land. And so then that will also show up in the activity dashboard and the activity metrics that we saw on that first page as well. And then the last part of that around opportunities. So what's our pipeline for our customer? What's happening with them? We go in and we look at, the values. And again, being able to either create a post, log a call. You can also open that record directly, which opens it into a second tab. And so then you can dive straight into that record and start working on it as well. So yeah, that is pretty much the demo and just sort of a really quick overview of where we were looking at with what's happening with embedding our dashboards, giving our users contextual and actionable insights right within the Salesforce platform of where they're working. And I have sent this slide deck through to Fred as well. So there are some links in here that I've added if anyone's interested about learning a little bit more about CRMA, but of course, reach out to me on LinkedIn as well, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions. So I will stop the share so I can see everyone, but were there any questions?
Thanks, Preena. Any questions from the room? The rooms?
Yeah,
Dave?
Preena, I'm just interested. There's sort of a bit of an overlap there between using CRM analytics or Salesforce analytics and Tableau as a replacement for it. Where do you see things? Have you played much with Tableau in Salesforce? And
I haven't actually. So I know there is another team within Telstra who use Tableau. However, it's not integrated into Salesforce as yet. So predominantly from an analytics view and where we see our teams using Salesforce, we do use Einstein or CRMA dashboards. So right now, for where we're working across our marketing, sales, service teams, we have about 40 dashboards that we've embedded within the Salesforce platform and also the partners community as well. But I'd definitely be interested in seeing how Tableau integrates into Salesforce and how that looks. So if anyone's done that, it'd be great to see some examples of it.
There's someone in the room that
Oh, awesome.
not naming names. Is our next volunteer for next tag, I reckon.
Yeah, I think so. That'd be good to see.
Yeah, thanks, Preena.
yeah.
Great. That's a good question. I got my next presenter now, next year. Any more questions or comments? I enjoyed the demo. Yeah, that was a good demo. It didn't crash, which was good. Any more questions or comments from the room?
I think not question but comment, and I think a lot of other software companies are going down this route where you're seeing a lot of visuals inside embedded within these applications, which then you're not sort of like having to be on different systems and stuff like that, and trying to incorporate everything together. And I think I think Power BI also do. I know we're not meant to say that in this room, but I've heard some things that they do some really augmented stuff as well. So using apps and stuff like that. But it's interesting to see the investment in this type of I guess user experience from a lot of software companies.
I think Tableau do it as well with the extensions, because we kind of go the other way. We put the that interface within an extension within a React app, for example, and allow people to work on something downstream of the dashboard via the app and interact with the data. Whereas what we're seeing is kind of the other way around, right? We've got the app and that's interacting here in the visualization, and you can achieve a similar sort of outcome, but it did seem like a pretty all-rounded product. I would like to see the Tableau dashboards in there. I think looking at the dashboards, I can listen to
Thanks to user group.
improvements for those users. But look, it was great. Thanks for that. Really, really interesting.
Thanks.
I think that there is one thing that is really relevant about using Tableau dashboards, especially in Salesforce, is the ability that they have to actually inherit the hierarchies profiles that you use there. I mean, you can embed Power BI through a visual force into Salesforce, but it's not quite recommended, especially because it doesn't inherit profiles on hierarchies, and you have to create some visual force for specific profiles and stuff. So, functional level is not recommended, although you can do it. I think that what you can do with embedding Tableau through the Lightning connector into a platform like Salesforce allows you to interact and allows C-level executives to actually enjoy that journey better than regular admins or standard users. So I would recommend that if you want to engage C-level executives quickly, embed a Tableau dashboard into your platform so that they can actually enjoy the ride. It's really, really simple.
Keep some of your content as well. Don't waste all your content for your presentation.
Well, my number is.
The other thing that Manny's showing up about there is it's actually using some of the strengths we know about Tableau natively. So we can build our visualizations to suit the business question that we're trying to answer. And you can have it based on the Salesforce data. So whether it's a case of I've built this visualization, I've got a scatter diagram, there's an outlier out here, I want to understand what that is. And if it's an opportunity or a lead or a customer, it doesn't matter. You've got the lead ID, the customer ID, the opportunity ID, and we can click on it and open up a Salesforce ready to edit page based on that outlier.
Yeah.
It just makes it so quick and easy.
Do you realize we're talking more about Salesforce and Tableau in the Tableau user
That's
group?
scary, isn't it?
Is someone recording that?
So Preena, you're probably in the different Salesforce user groups as well. We'd be very keen on getting in and helping you guys with understanding what Tableau is as well.
Yeah, of course. I actually co-lead the Brisbane Salesforce user group.
Here we go.
So we do have a meeting next week, but we've got a local ISV who's coming to talk to us about what they do from the ISV space. But yeah, we're on LinkedIn. We've put all of our meetings up there, so it'll be great. And I'm really definitely interested to see the next Tableau user group. So that's something that'll be quite cool. But just listening to a couple of things that you were talking about there, we've definitely feel that our users benefit more from having the dashboards embedded where they're working. I think you see an uptake of that, and you see it from a higher level as well, right through to the end users who are in those individual cases or accounts.
Well, the other thing, just building on that point, Tableau's now for probably the last 5 years been building on APIs specifically with that intent. So there's something like about 11 APIs available. It's crazy the number, and they're all built for different use cases, so that it's easy to build them into that inline, stay in the flow sort of thing.
Yeah, I just saw the message from Marco in the chat, just asking whether the visualization that was presented was built from the ground up or built from pre-existing components. I built that little demo dashboard in about 10 minutes today. So that was from scratch, just using some demo data and just bringing the data set I didn't do. That was just an uploaded Excel spreadsheet. But once I had that data set, it was just about bringing all of the different elements onto the page.
Cool. So Preena, I'm going to share the link after the meeting. I usually do follow up and share the YouTube recording, and I can share your user group as well. So if people are interested, then we can sort of, since we're part of the same family, Trailblazers and Data Farm.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. I really enjoyed. I think everybody enjoyed your preso as well.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? So for people in the room, we've got a lucky door prize or lucky chair prize. You need to check on the chair. There's a sign that says you want something, and I've got some Tableau swags, I think it's called. So just go around your chairs and see if you. So otherwise, I don't know, maybe check on this one. So for people that join us virtually, thanks for joining us. I hope you'll be able to join next time in the city.
Yeah. So I'd say I'm a little bit disappointed I'm not there now. As you can see from behind me, I do love a bit of swag.
Someone won the prize. So thanks, Kris. Thanks, Preena. I think without presenters, there will be any talks. It's always good to share ideas and experiences. So thanks again. I appreciate that. If people are in the room virtually or in the room, if you feel like presenting, looks like we've got one presenter. Say hello to the camera, Manny. But we usually meet every couple of months, so next time you'll all be invited. Thanks again, and see you online somewhere. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.